We need a great reset.
Learn to use the dark side of the Force.
Starting out,
Jinx.
big news for some. Other people just don't understand. This is coming from foxnews.com. This is an outlet I wanted to sort of bring regarding this story, because if any outlet would have more to say about the Georgia Guidestones, any mainstream outlet rather, it would be Fox. But let's hear the headline. Georgia Guidestones explosion. Blast has destroyed a large portion of the monument, police say. And it reads like this. Police in Georgia are investigating an explosion Wednesday targeting the Georgia Guidestones monument, which the state says is known as, quote, America's Stonehenge. The state says that, huh? All right. The early morning blast, quote, destroyed a large portion of the structure in northeastern Elbert County. According to the Georgia Bureau of Investigation, quote, the preliminary information indicates that unknown individuals detonated an explosive device around 4 a.m. on Wednesday, July 6th. The agency said in a statement, the Elbert County Sheriff's Office is among the law enforcement agencies investigating, and a bomb squad has been called to the scene, according to Fox 5 Atlanta. Yeah, he gets some bomb squad robots. Quote, known as America. This is a great quote. Quote, known as America's Stonehenge, this 19-foot high monument displays a 10-part message espousing the conservation of mankind and future generations in 12 languages, according to a description of the state of Georgia's tourism website. The site is about 7 miles north of Elberton, near the South Carolina state line. Granite quarrying is a top local industry, which was just kind of a fun little detail. I don't know if they have a word count that they were trying to hit a quota for, but it was just kind of a fun little detail. Hey, also, they mined granite around there. Oh, fascinating. The roadside attraction received renewed attention during Georgia's May 24th gubernatorial primary, when third place Republican candidate Candace Taylor claimed the Guidestones are satanic and made demolishing them a part of her platform. Quote, the Guidestones also serve as an astronomical calendar, and every day at noon the sun shines through a narrow hole in the structure and illuminates the day's date on an engraving, the tourism website also said. Sounds like Fox News just kind of went on their website to fill their article here. Quote, the names of 4 ancient languages are inscribed on the side near the top: Babylonian, cuneiform, classical Greek, Sanskrit, and Egyptian hieroglyphics, it added. Quote, the Guidestones are mysterious in origin.
No, they're
for
not.
No one knows the identity of a group of sponsors who provided its specifications. Mystery, shrouded in mystery, the American Stonehenge.
For those who are not familiar, there was a documentary made by Chris Pinto. It featured our friend Dr. Future, Mike Bennett. And I know they had some tensions in the background there, but both gentlemen, I believe, are fine researchers and brothers in Christ. There's a documentary called Dark Clouds Over Elberton, the true story of the Georgia Guidestones. And they uncovered a lot in that documentary. I don't know why it doesn't get talked about more. Maybe it's because it was made by independent Christians and not like Alex Jones or something. But
you're talking about the documentary.
The documentary, yeah. They uncovered R.C. Christian, which basically was a guy who was a Rosicrucian. And, there were some interesting things that they uncovered in the documentary, going into guys' shed and, opening suitcases with documents. It's pretty intensive. So to say that we don't know is sort of lazy, I would say.
Well, what I love about this reporting from Fox is every piece of information that they really give on the Georgia Guidestones is just taken from the website of the Tourism Council of Georgia. So, when they say It's so mysterious. I mean, it was mysterious until researchers figured it out. But, it's all part of the touristy part of the attraction.
Well, plus, I think
even calling it America's Stonehenge is hilarious, because Stonehenge, the original one, is like, thousands of years old or something.
Right.
And this one's like, I don't know.
30 years old.
Yeah,
what year
it was built
it?
during our lifetime.
Yeah, well, it was 1979, I think, was when the plan started.
50.
So, yeah, about.
Well, that's when the plan started. Who knows when it was actually erected? We could probably look it up on Wikipedia if we wanted. But for those who are unfamiliar with the types of commandments, you get the 10 commandments of, saving humanity written on different sides of the pillars here. Number 1, probably the most alarming: maintain humanity under 500 million in perpetual balance with nature. So right there, right off the bat, the Guidestones, the guiding principles start with, kill 80% of all humans.
Yeah, or at least maintain
cool.
a level that's much less than it is now. So yes, they
somehow
failed. They weren't able to follow the guide.
You want to run the math on that real quick? 500 million.
It's like
what is that? The percentage of our current?
There's 7 billion.
We're at like 8 billion.
Are we at 8 now? Yeah,
I don't know.
Let me do some math.
While you do that math, I'll look this up. Number 2 is guide reproduction wisely, improving fitness and diversity. Oopsies.
16x. So 1/16 is about 500 million. So that's quite a bit.
What's percentage wise of 1/16?
Percentage wise, that
got to be
is
under 20%.
6%.
20%. Yeah, 6%. So we need to eliminate 94% of humanity.
Yeah, there you go.
Number 2 is guide reproduction wisely, improving fitness and diversity. A little bit of eugenics there. You gotta choose wisely. 3, unite humanity with a living new language. Who knows what that means? 4, rule passion, faith, tradition, and all things with tempered reason. Okay, so you got to be robots. 5, protect people and nations with fair laws and just courts. Okay. Seems reasonable, I guess. 6, let all nations rule internally, resolving external disputes in a world court. WEF, anyone? Yeah. 7, avoid petty laws and useless officials. I think we can all agree with that one. Number 8, balance personal rights with social duties. That one's just unremarkable. 9, prize truth, beauty, and love, seeking harmony with the infinite. 10, be not a cancer on the earth. Leave room for nature. Okay. Okie dokie. So there you go. Those are the types of things. Of course, the first few are the ones that really alarm those who are paying attention. Of course, eliminating 94% of humanity is a bit of a problem. Institutionalized eugenics, historically been a bit of a problem, and et cetera, et cetera. And it seems like somebody took things into their own hands. It's 4 a.m. Somebody set off some sort of explosive. You can see the pictures. Damage kind of throughout. However, one of the 4 main pillars completely destroyed.
Yes.
I
find this whole thing very interesting, very suspicious, obviously. There have been attempts to not destroy it necessarily, but vandalize it in the past.
There's been vandalism, the black goo. Somebody had thrown black goo on it.
There was like a corner of it that was chipped off and stuff. So it's an ongoing thing. I find it very interesting that Fox News, it's almost like they don't know what to do with it, because they have that line in there about the politician. Who is it? Georgia's Republican candidate Candace Taylor, claiming the Guidestones are satanic and made demolishing them part of her platform. That just sets her up as being the culprit for this, or at least her sentiment.
Well, and whether or not it's tied to her directly, what it does is it frames the explosion, the desecration of the monument, as a politically motivated event, which means it's being sort of, it could, if that continues, if that sort of framing of it continues, it could be considered terrorism.
Yeah.
If they are able to connect it to politics like that.
Yeah, normally, and we always talk about this, how themes emerge as we put together episodes, and it's been a few days. Obviously, 4th of July, there's a lot that happened there, but the sentiment I get and the feeling I get and just the takeaway from all this feels to me, and again, this is just my opinion, that the counterculture, the rebellion, so to speak, is being stoked, very much so. And this sort of event, you're going to see a lot of anti-WEF, anti-New World Order types rejoice over this. Like, yeah, down with the thing. And that's exactly the reaction that's probably, welcomed in the political atmosphere. And I think it extends beyond just the US, but it does feel like they are grooming, so to speak, the civil war that is
the
kind
population.
of a global war that is brewing here, because there are a lot of people that have learned about the Great Reset and Klaus and all this kind of stuff in the last couple of years, and I think people, now that stuff like this is starting to happen, we're reaching a threshold, like a tipping point where the public at large, the mainstream especially, can start labeling these events as some kind of terrorist activity or whatever. The anti-globalist
the media is
people
doing it for them, and they just grab onto it. I think it's interesting. I gotta give a shout out to a quiet watcher in Twitch. Says, what if blowing it up was someone's version of artistic expression? Come on, is that not a legitimate form of protest? Destroying a monument that is offensive to your politics?
There's a biblical precedent to some of that too, destroying high places. So again, it can be used in that religious context to justify property damage.
Even politically, I mean, you saw in 2020 during the sort of Black Lives Matter era of 2020, destroying monuments, taking down statues, these types of things. So I don't know why this would be any different, but okay. Yeah. Also, obviously, I'm not encouraging anybody to destroy anything. No, it's not what I'm here to do, but it is a pretty interesting juxtaposition. Now, it is also funny to note, I mean, the Georgia Guidestones, for those in a certain population in the U.S. interested in certain topics, like you said, would rejoice at this, at the explosion of such a
satanic temple,
satanic monument. But there's not many people. I haven't heard anybody been like, no, we love the Georgia Guidestones. There's not really, I haven't seen it. Have you seen any like blue check marks on Twitter? Just like, what a horrible event. That monument means so much to me and my family.
Well, it
kind of gives them away as some sort of Masonic.
Yeah. Well, I would imagine there is something. Just that one line from that Fox article, which, by the way, it does speak into that flipperoo, where CNN and these other guys are more friendly to the Republican side of the aisle, whereas Fox may be giving bait to the liberal side. Right. That line is bait right there. It's like, see, Republican, even Fox said it.
Especially since, so many of the violence perpetrated in the nation recently has been attributed to Republicans. So of course it's like, see, Republicans, they want to destroy your monuments. Speaking of destroying monuments and traditions, over here at the dailysignal.com, there was another switch up over the weekend or over the 4th. And it says here, for July 4th, NPR ditches Declaration of Independence. At National Public Radio, the document that effectively created the United States is out. Predictably, this is a conservative outlet, by the way. Predictably, this year, the left-wing media churned out a drumbeat of pieces about why Independence Day isn't so great for one reason or another. It's an annual tradition, so no surprise. The left had a bad month at the Supreme Court, so we now have to hear about how democracy is over and America is doomed. This year's popular gripe was that the Supreme Court's decision in Dobbs v. Jackson Women's Health Organization overturning Roe v. Wade is reason to stop celebrating America. Now that Americans can choose to limit or prohibit abortion, the 4th of July deserved to be canceled. It seemed that for some of our countrymen, patriotism stems from always getting your way. If left-wing publications want to go with this message, that's fine. At least we know where they stand. But why is it coming from national, publicly funded media? National Public Radio, or NPR, had a long-standing tradition in which hosts read the Declaration of Independence every 4th of July. NPR kept this going for 33 years.
America!
Until this Independence Day.
Of course. Of course.
Then they have a blue checkmark, Leela Fidel from NPR here. It's a tweet. This July 4th, we break with tradition. Instead of a reading of the Declaration of Independence, NPR Inskeep examines what equality means and has meant in this document. Important segment about our past and future, produced by Marka blah blah blah. In 2022, NPR instead opted for a commentary segment on the morning edition show to talk about equality. This ended up, you gotta love these conservative publications here. They put equality in quotes. So, it's not equality as you'd find it in the dictionary, but as is defined by whoever they're making fun of. This ended up being mostly a discussion about racism and the end of Roe v. Wade, and included an obligatory shot at Republicans. Quote, many of our debates on this July 4th turn on what equality means, what voting rules really give equal access to the ballot. Do abortion laws give a woman equal control of her body? At what point is a fetus entitled to equal rights? NPR host Steve Inskeep said. Inskeep then said Republicans want unequal voting power.
Yada, yada, yada.
And then it goes into the whole thing.
We get it.
Yeah, so 33 years. What good timing for them to hold a tradition and then drop it right on its head.
Makes perfect sense.
Mm-hmm.
I just found this, just to throw it in, to go back to the Guidestones for a moment. Candace Taylor's video, her campaign video about demolishing the Guidestones. Do you want to take a look real quick?
Sure.
Let's see if we can play this video. Give me 1 second as I... internet. Okay, here we go. Internet. Da-da-da. Here we go. Come on,
they
play.
told us what they wanted to do. Some might even say they had to get our permission.
Ooh, listen to that accent.
To at least tell us ahead of time, even if we didn't believe them.
Very intense.
Over 4 billion people have been injected with something that took just 9 months to create.
We're going to get canceled.
Ask yourself why.
It's doing a pan of the Guidestones. The 500
Back in
million.
biblical times, human sacrifice was a form of demonic worship. We're still doing it.
I was going to say,
in present day,
still
by
is
killing our
now.
unborn. It's the same demons. It's the same sacrifice. It's the same sin. It's just a different time.
This is a long shot in and of itself, running for governor against an incumbent.
Okay.
Why are you
All right. This
It's
is
very abortion centric.
Yeah.
They'll give a stat about abortion and then show the Georgia Guidestone sort of eugenics command. And
I think that's her
so this
standing
was
in front of the Guidestones too. I think they're driving to it and they're doing a little video shot of her standing there in front of it. So
interesting. Yeah. And that's at the end of that, she says her executive order would be destroy the Georgia Guidestone. Executive order number 10.
Demolish the Georgia Guidestones. Wow. Okay. I think this is definitely part of the stoking of the Civil War narrative. And yeah, you got to have a side start to break stuff. Just like how the Democrats, I mean, think about the Republican right-wing conservative movement exploding in the climate of Black Lives Matter, riots in the streets, everything else. I mean, conservatism really, I mean, media, all that stuff went huge, especially in the light of Trump losing the election. So
you're talking about the pendulum swinging.
Yeah.
Yeah, I find it so interesting that the the Georgia Guidestones would hold such a special place in this, in any sort of political campaign.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think if there was a liberal candidate who one of their like main focuses to get elected would be destroy a monument. I mean, we know that the you know,
a lot of statue talk.
The liberal side of things, they're generally in favor of taking down statues they don't like. But I wonder if it's made it just straight up into a campaign video. How long is that campaign video, by the way? I was expecting like a 30-second.
Minute 50, actually. Yeah.
That's pretty long. That's a long thing. Okay, well, there you go.
Yep. I think the greater theme here is the downfall of America, as we saw signaled over the weekend. And yeah, sorry, going back to that article that we read about the 33 years NPR not reading the Declaration of Independence. It's fascinating to me that there is a movement, both nationally and internationally, of the pushback against the World Economic Forum, the New World Order, everything that we've been talking about over the last 10 years is now maybe hijacked is too strong of a word, but it's come to a head where there's a critical mass where the population is aware of those issues. And now it's a polarizing issue where you can do the divide and conquer very powerfully at a world stage. And I bring it up also because I have this clip here from Anthony Pompliano. He's known as Pomp in the Bitcoin crypto world. And I bring it up because he had this video called Bitcoin is the Modern Declaration of Independence. And I want people to listen to this for a moment. It's about a minute and a half here that I clipped it down. And I just want your thoughts on this, Basil.
Okay.
Here we go.
You have to understand what the Declaration of Independence was doing. Bitcoin is a database of code, and it allows for any person to opt in to new monetary sovereignty. What it means is if you don't consent to the previous regime of governance, where a central bank can debase your currency unilaterally without your agreement. There's a lot of people who think that Bitcoin is the peaceful resistance to that lack of true agreeable governance. And so naturally, Bitcoin, when it was launched on January 3rd, 2009, marked the start of a new monetary regime. It has a programmatic monetary policy. It's transparently presented for anyone to audit at any time. If you are an individual anywhere in the world, regardless of sex, creed, gender, wealth, or status, you can opt in to a brand new monetary regime. You don't have to do it with 100% of your economic value, but you now have a path that allows you to conduct some sort of protection of your own assets. The United States of America and the private property rights of its citizens makes it one of the greatest countries in the world. Now Bitcoin is exporting these American ethos to people around the world and allowing them to have actual private property of their monetary assets, allowing them to peacefully resist against the debasement of their currency. Today, Bitcoin provides a different path. It allows for anyone to opt in and to participate in a brand new Declaration of Independence.
What do you think?
Interesting. Well, it's a whole thing. I mean, the original philosophy behind the Bitcoin and cryptocurrency in general is exactly what he's talking about.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, like many, philosophically sound beginnings, it's of course been sort of co-opted and either demonized or adopted by forces who wish to control it. So whether or not it is that currently, what he's saying has always been sort of the libertarian
ideal
philosophy. Yeah, the ideal, the philosophical root of Bitcoin. Yeah, I think to call it a declaration of independence is quite a piece of rhetorical, passion.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, there are aspects of it, but I think it's really interesting that by providing this sort of exit from the current monetary enslavement as part of the whole World Economic Forum, Great Reset, all that stuff is a mechanism where it's exactly mirroring the mark of the beast, where you can provide it to anybody in the world.
I don't know about exactly, but yeah, it's there's certainly been people who make that comparison.
I'm just saying in terms of, who it's available to, which is, it doesn't matter your economic, status, your race, your gender. It doesn't matter where you are in the world, you can access it. That's part of the mark of the beast.
Yeah, I didn't really think that was a very interesting point he made, though, because anybody can already get any currency they want, apparently, except for rubles right now.
I was going to say, there's a big sanction against the Ruskies. I don't know if you knew that.
Yeah, I hadn't heard. Essentially anybody can get any currency they want around the world. You just go to a Forex, foreign exchange place and just get whatever money you want. It's not that, that was kind of the least compelling part, I think, of what he was mentioning. The thing that really Bitcoin and cryptocurrency in general used to mean, what it used to stand for, is a medium of exchange not controlled by a central authority.
Right.
And, you can expand that out as poetically as you want to make it mean it's the sort of American ethos. But I think it's interesting spiritually, because spiritually, we should not be connected. Like, what is the American ethos? It's, freedom to make your own decisions, freedom from oppression of centralized
property
governments.
Rights, as you said, yeah.
Property rights is a really big part of it. And that's what you would kind of generally call the American ethos. It's not necessarily an economic unit, an economic medium, Well,
that's
Bitcoin
interesting
can
too,
be a part
because
of that. But
that's interesting too, because property rights and Bitcoin being treated as property is fascinating, because it does seem to promote a sort of, hey, you can be anywhere in the world. You don't have to be in America anymore to have the American ideal. You can be anywhere in the world, especially NATO nations.
It's our main export.
Yes,
America's main export is the sort of the ideology of the American ethos,
right?
Which many people around the world, whether they're in America or not, think is a pretty cool product.
Right.
Problem is, it has become a product, and every product can be valued or devalued as is deemed necessary by the manufacturer.
Yeah. So you had a couple articles to sort of round out that point about the export of the United States ethos. And what I think is happening with, and symbolic with, the Georgia Guidestones is a sort of new civil war, like a tangible new civil war, not just within America, but I think it's going to resonate around the world. But it's some kind of American exodus, both, in terms of an export of an idea, perhaps, but also just literally, hey, there's other places that are better for the American dream.
Right. And it's, again, we've been talking about commodity valuation and Bitcoin being sort of idealized as a commodity by some, very important people who it would matter that they think that. Doesn't matter what we think, Gons. We're just podcasters.
we're just mouth breathers, apparently.
And I referenced just a second ago the American, some might call it the American dream, the American ethos, things like that. I believe that it really is, can be described as a commodity. The value of it is controlled by, the market. And it's something that at this point, all around the world, everywhere, it doesn't matter where you go, people know when you say the American dream, they know exactly what you're talking about. And to some degree, they trade in that commodity. Yeah. And there was a wave of articles that came out over the weekend, and I picked a couple just to make the example that, now that America has exported this commodity around the world, and other countries in varying ways and in varying intensities have adopted the American dream as, a commodity in their country. And with that, much as how we've seen so many commodities either devalued or disrupted through supply chain or inflation, or even just the tinkerings of financial elites on Wall Street, we also see this communication, this trend going on. And this is part of what we do on the show. It's part of the importance of the show, in my opinion, that it's not just what does one article say. It is what is hovering in the air, being distributed to the population, not just of America, but of the world. And so here's a couple of examples of that. This one is in Time Magazine. Time Magazine, you may have heard of it. And there's this article here, Finding the American Dream in Canada.
Oh, Ooh. Canada. Justin's got freedom for us, man.
He's got the freedoms. He's got the freedoms. And this is written sort of in the from the perspective of a Muslim person. The author is Sophia Ali Khan, who's the author of A Good Country, My Life in 12 Towns and the Devastating Battle for a White America. So you can kind of see what's happening here. I'll read you an intro, and more or less you'll get the idea. This festive period for Muslims around the world, one Eid, or Muslim celebration, is just past, and another is coming up in July. I've left strings of starry lights in the tall windows of our family room where they can be seen twinkling from the street in our neighborhood outside of Toronto. There's a shadow box-like window by my front door where I'd hung a colorful garland of star ornaments at the start of Ramadan in April. I wasn't always willing to mark my family publicly as Muslim. In fact, we were 3 years into becoming Canadian when I first realized that I could put up lights for our celebrations without any of the trepidation I'd felt in my hometown in Pennsylvania. There is a huge contrast between being Muslim in Canada and being Muslim in America today, and it has a lot to do with Canada's decision to tell the truth about its history, while America buries its own. Yeah, so
America bashing. Time
America
Magazine.
bad, Canada good. There was, let me get into some numbers here. Recent studies and surveys by the Institute for Social Policy and Understanding, ISPU, tell us our concerns were justified. ISPU has been a boon to American Muslims who had previously lacked good data about themselves, helping us see more clearly how we're faring. In 2020, half of all Muslim parents reported having a school-aged child who experienced bullying related to their religious identity in the previous year. In 2020, they said, so right before the pandemic. In almost a third of those cases, the perpetrator was a teacher or school official.
Ooh.
In 2021, Muslims reported experiencing institutional discrimination at levels much higher than other religious groups. For example, 25% of Muslims versus 5% among those of other religious affiliations reported religious discrimination while receiving health care. At the airport, and they don't go into exactly what that means either.
Just
because
numbers,
as we know, religious discrimination can mean a lot of things, especially in healthcare, where different religions either reject
they reject
certain,
or whatever.
Exactly, like vaccinations, perhaps. If a organization is trying to vaccinate you and you say it's against my religious affiliation, and they say don't care, well, that's religious discrimination.
Yep.
At the airport, those figures are 44% for Muslims, contrasted with 5% of the general public. Applying for jobs, it's 33% for Muslims and 8% for the general public. And so they lay this all out. Long story short, come to Canada. Canada is more American than America. And, this is a great piece of PR for Canada. And Canada especially is an interesting one for the U.S. because that's where everybody threatens to go if their presidential candidate doesn't get elected. And that never happens. They never actually do it. It's just like a fun thing to say. I always wondered. I wonder what Canada thinks about that. All these Americans sort of threatening to go there. And then
I've seen a lot of "we don't want you here" kind of sentiment from a lot of the celebrities that peddled that sentiment there.
And this is all revolving. This entire thing is sort of revolving around how Canada is accepting their past, their history, all the horrible things that were done to the natives in Canada during the colonization by Europeans. But Canada just accepts it so much and is so good at talking about it and making it right. Whereas with America, they ignore slavery.
Even the teachers
we never talk about slavery here.
Yeah.
So long story short, Canada good, America bad. Now, that could have just been a one-off, but we jump over here to The Atlantic, and The Atlantic has a headline, "What's better in Britain?" Yes, the roads are confusing, the food portions unambitious, the peanut butter not so good, but for this American, life in the UK has its compensations. And it's kind of goes through the same thing. This person has lived in Britain for 5 years, and it's so much better. And really, this is where the real American dream is happening. All my favorite celebrities live here. This is kind of an interesting. They talk about the. Well, let me read this one. To live as a foreigner here, talking about Britain, is to be in a constant state of learning British idiosyncrasies. An education that, as an American with, in theory, a language and a good deal else in common, I didn't fully expect to have to undertake. I'd assume that my move from Washington, D.C. to London would be seamless, devoid of the culture shock and language barriers that I had experienced when I went to live in continental Europe and the Middle East. After all, the United States and Britain share many historical ties. You could say that.
I saw that and I thought, do you not know the history of the founding of America? It's sort of based on, saying,
certainly some very specific historical ties between.
I guess you can call it share.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, so the big point of this entire article is, hey, Americans, America and Britain are different. They're not the same. They're different. And let me tell you, Britain is better. It's more American than America because we don't have Marjorie Taylor Greene.
Right. We don't have all these radicalized people to mess up our freedom or our democracy. Exactly. Yeah, sure.
And there's a bunch of examples of basically how Republicans are mean. And so that's why you need to go to Britain.
Republicans are mean. Okay.
Republicans are mean. So move away. The American dream is elsewhere. And while it's kind of cringy to read these and listen to I'm not reading them for a reason.
Sure.
They're somewhat boring. Yeah, and make all the same points about why America's bad in other places. The whole point is the American dream as a commodity has been exported around the world. And so you can leave the US and still have all the best parts about what you want, what you love about the US, because the big message that we're hearing over and over and over and over, and the shooting over July 4th, as well as all the other shootings, and the pushback, the insanity that we haven't banned guns. Well, look, all these countries that banned guns, they're better than America. They have the American dream. They're more American than America.
This theme will play out throughout the episode, but yes, it's very obvious when you step back and look at it. And yeah, I think again, it speaks into this great American exodus, and we're being pushed out. And pay attention to the NATO countries, by the way, both Canada and UK, part of NATO, obviously. So, it'll be interesting to see the propaganda move in that direction of like all the NATO countries are safe and American ethos, whereas not so much in Russia. That's why we hate Russia and China, So that'll be a whole thing.
So the point is you can get all the good things about America somewhere else and you don't have the bad things. There was this one line here where they're talking about, what do you miss about America? And what they missed about America was ranch dressing and cold sweet tea. Not like the First Amendment, which no other country has, a constitutional command for free speech.
Yeah.
The UK doesn't have it. Canada doesn't have it. None of that stuff. I mean, much less the Second Amendment. Don't even get them started on that. But no. I don't miss a legal guarantee to free speech. What I miss is ranch dressing and cold sweet tea. So there you go. If you're looking, if you're not happy with the America you live in, just go to Canada or Great Britain and you'll be fine.